All right. Thanks again, coaches, for listening. Uh, Real honor for me today to bring in John Oxton from Lakeville North, someone that was, one of my bucket list coaches. And I'm really glad that he was willing to come on. So, Coach, I appreciate you coming on tonight.
You bet. Thanks for having me. This has been super fun to listen. I pretty much listened to all of them, not all of them all the way through, but I think it's really cool what you've been doing. And I think back to when I was a young coach, it'd be like, God, dang, I wish this kind of stuff would have been around when I was doing that. And I'm sure it's been very fun for you to do. And it's been a huge service for high school coaches for sure.
Well, I appreciate hearing that from you. I know I was, I'm a Brainerd grad in the Jeremy Millsap, who's a Brainerd Dispatch sports editor, randomly called me one day. I was in the Target parking lot when my kids were napping and was sitting with the car running when my wife ran in, and he called and asked, and we did a little interview for the local paper because there's not a lot of sports to write about, obviously. And he said, who are two coaches that you want to have on? And I said, Coach Oxton from Lakeville North and Coach McKenzie from Minneapolis North. So I appreciate you letting me cross that off my list.
Nice.
So,
cool.
As we always start, Coaching Wikipedia page. So talk about where you're from, where you played, and then what led you to Lakeville and now Lakeville North High School.
Wow. So I'm going to try to keep this really quick. And I know it's going to ramble a little bit because I've been around a long time. This year was my 40th year as a coach. Can you believe that? It's pretty unbelievable. But I born and raised Fargo, North Dakota, played at Fargo North High School, played football and basketball, graduated, went to North Dakota State. Absolutely zero interest in or no thoughts that I would be a coach at all. Went there as a business major, had no idea what I was doing. Talked to a guy and he said, hey, why don't you go back to Ben Franklin Junior High, which is where I went to junior high, and they're looking for 7th grade football coaches. You should come and do it. It's a blast. So I did it. Absolutely loved it. Within probably 3 weeks of doing that, I asked the guy, he was a young guy just like me. He was in college. He was going to become an educator. And I said, geez, this coaching is so fun. What do you have to do to, I had no clue. What do you have to do to kind of, get into this business and stuff? And he's like, well, you got to become a teacher, basically. It'd be the easiest way. What do you like to teach? I'm like, I don't know. It's like, I guess I've always liked games and stuff. So I guess I'll teach Phi Ed and change my major. I did 7th grade football, 7th grade basketball, then 8th grade, 9th grade. My last year, my 5th year in college, because I had to cram my 4 years into 5. But my last year of college, I was the sophomore football coach and the sophomore basketball coach at my alma mater, Fargo North. And so I had done 4 years of coaching when I was in college. And then at that time, I just thought, you know what, I'm pretty smart. I think I know everything. I'm ready to be a head coach. And I had a connection with the guy that was the head coach at Fargo North. He was originally from Montana. He had connections in Montana. And I decided, for whatever reason, I don't even have any idea, I'm just like, I'm going to apply for head coaching jobs in Montana. And I've got a job in Wilsaw, Montana, a population 250 people, 32 kids in the high school. I was the head girls basketball coach and the head boys basketball coach. Girls was in the fall, boys was in the winter. And I did that for 2 years, moved on to Gardner High School in Montana, which is the north entrance to Yellowstone Park. Was fortunate enough to win a state championship there. Met a guy, Harry McClanahan, who was the basketball coach in Lakeville and also was becoming an administrator. And he actually asked me to apply for the job in Lakeville. And so I was living in Montana at the time. We had just had our first child and then actually had our second child right before we left Montana. But we just decided we wanted to get closer to home. My wife had a sister that lives in Minneapolis. And we just thought, you know what, let's go there. Knew nothing about Lakeville at all. And got the job, and that was in 1990. So I've been there for the last 30 years. So, it's been quite a ride. I've been the head coach the whole 30 years, except for 2 years. I took basically a sabbatical and watched my daughter play girls basketball, which was probably the smartest thing I ever did. And I actually think that in some ways it's allowed me to stay in the business this long. Because as you know, you've done it 7 years, you know what kind of a grind it can be. And, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of passion. And that 2 years off, which was in, I think, 2006, 7, and 7, 8, those 2 years, When I came back, I just was very much rejuvenated and just ready to really get back into it. And it's really allowed me to, um, have just a great career. And, so it's been really fun. And then it doesn't hurt that when I came back, we had a run of really, really good players too. So it makes it kind of nice.
I want to talk more about that. You taking that 2 year off. That's something I had down the list here, but now you mentioned, I want to jump in there. So talk about like what went into that decision. And you mentioned it was the best decision that you made. Can you just expand on that a little bit more and what you're able to maybe look at the game differently after your 2 year leave? Being a dad, which is all of our most important role that we serve. As being parents, those coaches that are parents, that's obviously our most important role. So just talk about a little bit more about what went into that decision, and then, how it kind of changed your coaching, stepping away for a couple of years.
Right. Well, it was kind of a unique situation because at the time, 2006 was the last graduating class of Lakeville High School. Actually, it was the first, excuse me, that's not right. It was the first graduating class of Lakeville North High School. All the seniors, when Lakeville South opened, all the seniors were together. I live actually really close to Lakeville South. So my daughter, they had no open enrollment. They suspended that when they opened the school. So she had to go to Lakeville South. And so she was a girl basketball player. My son was a senior. My daughter was a sophomore. And that year, it was just weird. I didn't get to see her games much. And I was coaching my oldest son. And anyway, it was just kind of a goofy deal. And I just decided, you know what, I'm not going to miss her last 2 years. And, it wasn't like she was some great player or anything like that, but it was just, I just felt like my family had sacrificed so much for me for so many years that I'm like, I'm not going to just miss her high school basketball career. I'm not going to do it. So, very lucky that I had a principal that would allow me to do that. The district office was cool with it. Basically, I was just going to step away. I had an assistant coach that was willing to. I'm like, I talked to him. He's still with me, Mike Nolan. And I said, Mike, are you willing to be the head coach for a couple of years? And I'm coming back. So, don't get too used to it or anything like that. So we all knew what was going on. And, it was just what it really did for me, I think, was I just looked at things differently. To be honest with you, I spent a ton of time watching coaches on the bench. It was not a very good basketball team, Lakeville South girls at the time. And I really, really focused on my daughter, but other coaches and officials, to be honest with you. Really watched them a lot and really did a lot of reflecting about, because I would say I'm pretty hard on officials, especially when I was younger. And I just really started to really take in the importance of we're all in this together. These guys are making a great sacrifice for the game to be willing to officiate. And we just have to do a better job of coaches of, communicating with them and appreciating them. And, so that was probably the biggest takeaway that I got. And then the other thing was just, I'm a very much a competitor. That's something that has driven me for years. And I've always enjoyed that. I love team sports. I love any sports, but I love team sports. I love the whole idea of getting people together and stuff like that. And when I was gone for those 2 years, I really missed that. I really missed that. And when I came back, again, it just really refreshed me. And it was just a super special time for my daughter and I. And my daughter's an amazing young woman. And, people always told me, oh, she'll appreciate it, coach. She'll tell you she appreciates it in 10 years. And it was like, I didn't have to wait for that. She told me all the time how, Dad, thanks so much for coming. And, so that's something that we will share for the rest of our lives. And that was pretty cool. So
that's awesome stuff. I think that's really, just amazing that you did that. I have 2 young girls, who knows if they're going to be playing basketball or what they'll be doing. They're 3 and 1, but, I'm sure that was a really hard decision. And And I like that what you mentioned too about the referees. I think it's so easy sometimes in the high school game to get on referees and ride referees, but they're making a big sacrifice to improve the game. I think that's a really good point that you brought up. I want to go back. You mentioned 40 years now you've been coaching. So talk about how coaching in itself has changed from when you first started, or maybe even when you first came to Lakeville in 1990 versus what it is today in 2020.
Well, I think the biggest difference is just and my wife actually, she's been with me this whole time and been with me all the 40 years. And, she thinks that the biggest difference is when it changed that we could coach in the summer. And I remember when that was being discussed, and I don't even remember what year it was, to be quite honest with you, but she was just like, she would tell me, she's like, this is going to be the worst thing that's ever happened. I mean, she was not into, my goodness, you're going to be doing this all summer long. And I think she had and I just thought, well, we're just going to practice a couple times a week or whatever. It's not going to be that big a deal. And you know what it's become. And it's just like, so really, I think the biggest thing that's changed, it's just become this whole consuming part, it's just a part of your life. It basically, if you're not doing something with basketball, you're thinking about basketball, and it's pretty much 365 days of the year. And, so that I think is the biggest thing that's changed. It used to be, hey, you kind of played in the season, you did what you could, you worked hard, you did all those things. But when the season got over, there'd be some open gyms and stuff like that, but not the organization that there is now. It's just, and obviously what it's done is AAU and all that kind of stuff. It has made, think of what has happened in Minnesota basketball. When I first got here in 1990, it was like, maybe one Division I player a year, maybe. And then now it's like the talent we have is unbelievable. In our league, we've got 2-3 guys playing in the NBA, 4 guys playing in the NBA. That's just unheard of. And Dawson Garcia will be another one. He'll be in the NBA someday. So, that part of it, it's just the whole overall year-long program, I think, is, just amazing how that has grown and developed, I guess.
This past season, you won your 600th game. Talk about what that was like. I think you were the 12th coach to get on the 600 wins list when that happened. Coach Klingsprung at Tartan was right behind you. So 600 wins. Just talk about what that was like for you.
Well, the biggest deal, number one, it means you've been around a hell of a long time. And the other thing that it means is you've had some really, really good players. And, I think I've always been of the opinion that I think head coaches get way too much credit and they get way too much blame, to be honest with you. The game, it's about the kids. And, I've been fortunate. It actually, the coolest thing about it was just, it really made me go back, and I thought about kids that I coached back in Montana. And, just all sorts of things that go through your mind. But the biggest thing is really the kids and all the coaches that I've had. So, and just being really thankful that I've had a family and a wife that has, allowed me to do this, because it's obviously my passion. It's my life's work. And I'm pretty fortunate that my wife has allowed me to do that.
Last question down memory lane, then we'll kind of get into your coaching philosophy and talk about some more of the program-based stuff that you've done and created such a successful program at Lakeville and now obviously at Lakeville North High School. 2014 state championship. Just talk about, again, that experience and what that was like to, big class, really good high school basketball, like you mentioned, NBA players that you had to go through to get there. And what was that like in 2014 winning that state championship?
Well, freaking unbelievable. Number one, it was unbelievable. The game itself was crazy. The season itself was, we just had an amazing year. JP was a very, very special player, but more so than just him, we had a bunch of kids that just bought in, and I honestly don't think that we were the best team in the state, but we were the best team in the state that night. And, it was just basically surreal. And, when I think back to, coming to Lakeville in 1990, Lakeville had never, ever been in a section championship game, ever. And we got into a section championship game I think it was my third year or something like that. And I remember that was such a big deal. We finally made it to state in 1995 for the first time ever, which was just unbelievable. So Lakeville is a football town. Always been a football town. Probably always will be a football town. And it was not known for basketball. And so for us to win a state championship, especially for people that have been around Lakeville for a long time, was like, wow, that was a big deal. So just super fun, and just validation of a lot of hard work by a lot of people, because it certainly wasn't just me, that's for sure. And so yeah, just crazy times and a crazy game, and to win it the way we won it was bizarre and super fun. For sure.
You mentioned the game's been changing, and part of that is the specialization of one, maybe two sport athletes, but the years of the three sport athletes are getting few and far between. Obviously, each program maybe has a couple, but you guys at Lakeville North seem like you're one of the ones who year in and year out have a really, really, really successful football program that I know you've been a part of on the staff in the past, and a really successful basketball program. So just talk about ways that you're able to work collaboratively with the football program to guarantee and provide an opportunity for those athletes that want to be good at football and want to be good at basketball to stick with it and also develop and become varsity contributors instead of having to feel like they have to pick one sport.
Right. I think the biggest thing probably is the communication between the coaches. And basically at Lakeville North, we've done a great job with that. The other thing I think is, how you set things up so that kids are able to do multiple things. Like you can't just talk about it. You got to walk the talk. You got to set it up so that kids don't feel a ton of pressure. You can't, oh, hey, it's okay to miss basketball and go to a 7-on-7 scrimmage and then say that, but then treat them like crap, or you know what I mean? Things have to align. And I think that kids at Lakeville North, they know that coaches are supportive. And I realize, like our football coach has to have some football only dudes to win the state championship. I can't win the state championship in the big class with a bunch of football players. I have to have some big time basketball players. I can sprinkle in the football guys, but that can't be my main thing. So, and we've just been so lucky in Lakeville that, we just have a ton of really good athletes, and we're successful. If you look at it at Lakeville North, we're successful in just about every sport, really, which is pretty crazy. And it's a credit to the coaches that have worked together, and, just a credit to the amount of talent that we've had. But, I just think the biggest thing is working together and then communicating with kids and just being really understanding that, hey, they're getting stretched in a lot of different ways. You got to be realistic and supportive. And, because like I say, even when we won the state championship, those guys weren't all just basketball guys. There were some football dudes in there that did a great job. Bronson Bruno was a football guy, and he took 4 charges in the state championship game, and we win. He plays the game of his life, and he's a football guy. So you got to have those guys for sure.
Talk about those conversations that you have with those guys. I know you've had some scholarship level football players who then come off the bench as seniors or have a role for you on the basketball team. Talk about how you just have, for some high school kids, it'd be hard, that could be an ego hit for some of them, but how do you get them to buy into having that role be much less than maybe it was in the fall, but also how valuable they are to the team?
Right. And, I'll tell you, and we've done that a ton. And I go back to, I credit just the culture at Lakeville North. And I know that's kind of weird, but I tell you what, our kids are very competitive. And I just think we have a bunch of coaches. We all kind of talk the same way. And, I know for me, probably the biggest thing, like I know you've asked other coaches in this podcast, what are some main things? And the main thing in the boys basketball program at Lakeville North is the team concept. I'm huge into that. And I constantly am talking about role players. I'm constantly talking about why I love basketball. I think it's the greatest game there is because it's very athletic. The best team doesn't always win. The best talent doesn't always win. The best team wins, but not the best talent. And, I love that. And I love that you can make an impact on your team in so many different ways. And I just think our kids, they just buy into it. We had Trey Hyde was on our 2012 runner-up team. With my youngest son was on that team. I had great players and stuff like that. Here, Trey is Metro Player of the Year in football, and in basketball, it's like, hey, dude, I need you to be a lockdown defender, and I need you to, do all these things. You're not going to get to shoot it all the time. And he had been a shooter his whole life, basically. And, just things like that we just had kids that have bought into that. And it's happened time after time after time. And again, I just have to credit the kids, but I think we as coaches have done a really good job of just setting the framework for that.
I'm gonna force you to take some credit for this, because I've always, your teams and I know Coach Fadness at Austin were two teams that I always watch from afar, and coaches that I tried to emulate and want to try to, know that I'm never going to be as successful as, but coaches that have, done things the right way and have had success in towns that maybe aren't, right, in the first ring of Minneapolis, St. Paul, where there's, where there is a ton of talent. And so one thing I've always noticed, and, when we were at the state tournament a couple of years ago, I walked over and watched your guys' state semifinal game up close, because I wanted to see, pretty much watch you and your staff and how you guys interacted with your guys and see what I could take from your staff. And the one thing that really stuck out to me was, like you mentioned, was how well your team played together and was there for one another. So I want to dive deeper into that. Is there any specific team building strategies that you have, or, communication, or, every couple of days you talk to so-and-so, or just what are some ways that you really build? Because it's one thing that, say, hey, we're going to play together, this and that, but how do you get them to apply that, teamwork and that being able to play together?
Right. That's kind of a good question. I think the main thing, to be honest with you, is the talk that I do constantly. I mean, I don't care if it's summer, I don't care if it's during the season. That's constantly in the forefront. That constantly comes up. It comes up in our defensive drills. It comes up in offensive things. Just that whole team thing. We also do weekly meetings. We call them Tough Panthers Win meetings, and TPW we call it. So our guys, my assistant coach runs it, and they do a lot of team building kind of stuff in there, and just talk about the importance of team. And he does a lot of different things with that, and that's something that we've done for years. We used to give out a red shoelace for kids that kind of, they would vote on it and, met criteria of being a team player and stuff like that. And we've kind of gone away from that, but I think it's just the constant, talk in our program. I don't know how to best describe it, but I think that any one of our kids, when they graduate, I think that they would say that we spent a crazy amount of time talking about team stuff and what we expect of a teammate. And I tell kids all the time, the biggest compliment I can give you is that you're a great teammate, that you're going to leave here and your legacy is going to be, you know what, so-and-so was a great teammate. They're not going to remember how many points you scored or what you did or anything like that. They're going to remember, the day-to-day stuff that you're doing with your teammates. And I don't know, I wish I had a better answer for you. I think we do a great job of communicating with kids. We talk to them. We do that a lot during lifting. So kids are lifting, we'll pull them off to the side. We do that. We talk to the kids every week. I know that some coaches on this podcast have talked about, different things, what they do. We also do a lot of talking to kids during like the JV game. I'll talk to my varsity guys. I'll pull them up. Hey, how are things going? Here's what I need you to do, whatever. And we'll just discuss stuff. So we try to keep that communication going all the time. And I'm a huge, huge believer in, I'm really trying to develop young men and trying to get them to realize they need to be advocates for themselves. Like mommy and daddy, you're a big boy now. Mommy and daddy don't need to call Coach Oxton and complain about playing time. Come and talk to me. Hey, I'm here all the time, and we have that. It's not just, hey, come and talk to me. We talk to them all the time. I talk to them a lot, and so I have zero conversations basically with parents, to be honest with you. And parents don't call me and complain about things because the culture that we've set at our school, for sure.
You've won 8 straight section championships. How do you approach the start of each season? Records start over, new group comes in. How are you approaching the start of each year?
It's that's a good question. We start a lot about talking about the history of our program and what we've done, and basically challenging kids to be like, okay, here we go. Do you want to be the next one, or do you want to be the first one to kind of break the string? And it's some pressure, but it's a pretty cool thing too, to win 8 section championships in a row. And I know there'll be a lot of people that are like, oh yeah, but you won it in section 1. It's like, well, yeah, okay, I can maybe get that a little bit, but it's not like we go to the state tournament and lay an egg either. We go to the state tournament, we're competing at a state level. We won a state championship. We've been in a state championship game many times. And, so we're very proud of it. And like I say, our kids have a lot of pride in that. And they know every summer we have our workout shirt has the number of section titles that we're going for the next year. So like our shirts this summer, there's a number 9 on the back and the upper back. And it's like, you look at that every day and you think, all right, what am I going for? Well, I'm going for number 9 now. Last year we didn't get an opportunity to do that because we got cut 1 game short. But, again, our kids take a lot of pride in that. And we just tell kids, hey, we're starting over, but here we go. This is a great challenge. And a lot of guys have done it before you. And we think we have a pretty good plan and a formula. Let's follow that formula and hopefully we can get there again. And like I say, we've been able to do it a lot, and it's because we've had super good players.
You have had really good players. I know you mentioned JP McKeer, who helped win the state championship in 2014. Tyler Wallace playing at Wisconsin. How do you challenge your best players day in and day out at practices?
How do I challenge them? Probably by chewing their butt a little bit. Basically, and a lot of it is bringing up. I'll bring up stuff that guys have done in the past too. I mean, the one thing about JP was he was a warrior. He was the ultimate competitive, person. And all I had to do in practice would go to JP and just be like, hey, I'd just pull him aside and just be like, hey, we are bad right now. We need to pick it up. And you need to, and he would go so hard. He would basically just embarrass kids, just like, I'm just going to, I'm not only going to score every time, but I'm just going to basically just take this thing over. And it just, the level of our practice just went like that. And so our kids have seen that. And then Nathan Reavers, very competitive, very skilled. Tyler, before him, Tyler Flack. So we've had a Division I player. Last year was the first time I haven't had a Division I player since 2011, at least one player on the team. And so, it just, bringing up, challenging them by bringing up the past, but also, just like the rest of us, sometimes splitting teams equally and stuff like that in practice, not just going varsity against JV. And, so we do whatever we can to be competitive. And, we've got, we're a big school. So for the most part, everybody's a pretty good player, you don't have a couple of weak links at the end, but yeah, I guess that's what we do.
What does a normal practice look like for you guys?
Well, I would say that it's pretty typical as far as, I've been, again, listening to the podcast. Most coaches are talking about 2-hour practices. That's pretty much where we start. We maybe go a little bit longer than that at the beginning of the year. We get down to probably about an hour and 15 minutes at the end. But I do much more shooting than I used to. We pride ourselves on being a pretty good 3-point shooting team. So we do a lot of shooting. But we practice a lot defensively too. It's been kind of interesting for me to hear you kind of talk about, well, we're kind of an offensive up-tempo team and stuff like that. And I think I heard you say one time, you said, if we give up a layup sometime, we just kind of, we'll give up a layup and just take it out of bounds and really go fast the other way. And to me, I hear that and I'm just like, like that would be over my dead body that we would give up a layup and then just, you know what I mean? So it's just, we are very much a defensive team. I love offense and stuff like that, but what we've done at Lakeville North is we've tried to base everything on what do we have to do to win? what do we have to do to be competitive? And we know what we get. We know what our talent level is. We know who we're going against. And, everything that we do is devised to be competitive. And so that has framed some of the things that we do. So one of the things is we just feel like defensively, we've got to be really good and really disciplined. Otherwise, guys like Trey Jones, Tyus Jones, who's the other dude? Gary Trent, Dawson Garcia, and then there's a list of, tons of other guys. They'll embarrass you in our league if you are not at a very high level defensively. So that's kind of how that has all transpired.
What are some of your best defensive drills?
What is some of our best defensive drills? I think for toughness, one of the drills that we like is we call it, I'm blanking on the name right now, but it's a zigzag drill that, so you're playing zigzag, just regular old zigzag. And then you've got two players standing on the blocks on the other end, and they do a zigzag. And when they come down, they can pick what side they go to, and they pass the ball into the post. And the other player who doesn't get the ball goes over and becomes a defender. And they basically go one-on-one in the post. Love that drill. It's a toughness drill. We get after kids. We push them. Bigs are together. Littles are together. And then when they're in the post playing defense, they're basically, kicking each other's butt a little bit. And we let them get pretty physical. And kids really like it. Super competitive. It's a great conditioner. And I think that it's a whole mindset of, for us, is toughness is a huge thing. And I'm not talking, it's not just physical toughness, but it's also mental toughness. And I honestly feel like we do a really good job of setting a culture of, we flat out are going to play harder than you. You know what I mean? Like if you come to my kids and be like, well, what's one of the things that the program is based on? It would be like, we're going to play harder than you. Like, we're going to play Princeton. I respect you as a coach. I respect your players and stuff, but we're flat out going to play harder than you. And we believe that, you know what I mean? And so that for us is a huge thing, and my pregame talk every game for the whole season, the first loose ball is ours, guaranteed 100%. That's not a 50-50 ball. That's our ball. We're going to take charges. We're going to make the extra pass. One of our guys gets knocked down on the floor. We're going to run over and we're going to pick them up. And just all those little things like that, we just constantly, go over that over and over and over. And it leads to our kids being pretty disciplined and pretty united. And, I think that's one of the things that I love about basketball is that, you go against a team that is totally bought in. They're pretty hard to beat. And then you add talent, then all of a sudden they're really hard to beat because they're not only really tough, but they're really, really good. And so that, again, has been kind of the recipe that we've been trying to use.
I like that you mentioned winning that first loose basketball. I think sometimes coaches are like, we're going to get every loose basketball. Well, that's not realistic. But that first one, like you mentioned, that can really set the tone for the game. And the other team's like, oh crap, they're going to get after it. They're going to get everything. And that can really turn that percentage, even all things equal, that percentage could easily go from 50-50 to 75-25 after that one basketball. So I really like how that's a point of emphasis and not like, let's get every single loose basketball. Well, that's not realistic. But that first one can set the tone for the entire game. I really like that. Last thing about practices, how do you balance, we hear a lot about, games-based stuff and less work 1-on-0, 2-on-0 than maybe even 5 years ago. How do you balance, you mentioned getting a lot of shots up, but also with your, your 5-on-5 or your competitive games type stuff?
Yeah. We, I think we probably start off typically like most people do. We'll start off with some shooting, then we'll go into some individual things. I just, when I listen to everybody talk, one of the things that I realize is I'm way less organized than, I make it way less complicated, I guess. When I hear some of the guys talking on this podcast, it's like, holy criminy, I don't know anything about basketball, small side of games or whatever. It's like, I don't even know what that is hardly. It's like, yeah, we do our 3-on-3, we do our 2-on-2, we do this, we do that, we do disadvantage drills. We do all of those things, but I would say that we're probably not nearly as organized as some of the things that I'm hearing on this podcast. But it's basically shooting, individual stuff. We do a bunch of defensive drills, and then the last half of practice, we'll do a lot of 5-on-5 stuff. That's typically what it looks like. One of the things I think that we probably do a little bit more than other people, I think, is we spend a fair amount of time on out of bounds plays. Not a ton of time, but I'm a big believer in the game is pretty simple. I try to keep it as simple as possible. And basically, if we get better shots than you get, we're probably going to beat you if we have decent talent. I mean, if we just flat out, if we don't have any talent, we're not going to win anyway. But talent being equal, if we can get better shots than you're going to get, we're probably going to win. And so one of the ways, and it goes back to my coaching of my daughter, actually, when she was in traveling team, they were so bad. We were so bad as a team. I guess I was with them, so I'm one of them. We were really, really bad. And it was almost like, girls, just dribble down to the baseline, throw it off the girl's leg so we can get an out of bounds play. Because then we're going to score. And, it's kind of weird, but I tell you, we take a lot of pride in that. We take a lot of pride in, number one, we're going to score more than you are going to score. And the other thing is we're really big on out of bounds defense too. We spend a lot of time on that, where, we're not going to give up baskets, easy baskets. So for us, a huge deal is transition defense is huge for us, because I totally believe we're not going to give you layups. You know what I mean? Like that is our main thing. We're going to circle the wagons and we're not going to give up layups. And because I just feel like keeping it really simple, you have to get easier baskets than your opponent. And if you're giving up easy baskets, you're going to get your butt whooped. That's just all there is to it. If you're playing against good teams. And in our league, every night you're playing against somebody pretty good. And, so again, we feel like we need to be pretty solid there. So practice, I don't think that we do anything really any different than what most people are talking about in the podcast, really.
Let's get into your transition defense, as that's a nice segue into getting to the offensive and defensive side of the ball. So defense is your passion, or is your main focus, like you mentioned. And I want to hear about your guys' philosophy in transition on defense, and maybe how that plays into offensive rebounds and how many you send back and that sort of thing.
Sure. And that all depends on basically who we're playing against. We always have one back. Sometimes we'll have two back. There's times where we'll have three back, actually. Not very often, but we basically designate guys to go to the board, just like everybody else. We tell kids, those first couple of steps are huge. You either got to go to the board hard or you got to sprint back. There can't be that indecision and stuff like that. And again, I just feel like our league is, and the competition that we play pretty much in all of our games, that it's at such a high level that our kids, they just realize you just have to do that. If you don't do that and you're playing Wayzata, it's going to be a problem. Or you're playing Hopkins, or you're playing, the people that we play, it becomes, that's the way that we have to play to be successful. It's got to be played at a very high level of intensity. And, so for us, it's nothing, crazy. It's basically sprint to the paint, protect the paint first, and then fan out from there. And, and it basically just comes down to, if we tell you to go to the boards, you need to go to the boards hard. And if you don't, you're probably going to be sitting. And if we tell you to be back and you don't get back, you're probably going to sit, and that's one thing that, kind of going into a different topic, is that one of the things that, our kids realize the intensity level that we have to play at. And if they don't do that, they realize that, somebody else is going to come in. That's one thing I've learned over all my years of coaching, is that the bench it's a pretty big motivator. It's a pretty big motivator. And when kids get too comfortable and they just think, I can kind of play at whatever level I want to, that's a problem. And so again, we've had good enough players and good enough depth that, kids learn that pretty quick, that, you're going to do it the right way and you're going to do what we're asking you to do. Otherwise, you're not going to get to play as much as you want.
Ball screen defense. I know that's the game's changing a lot on the offensive side of it, where pretty much every team is running something ball screen related. You got to go against a couple times a year, an NBA player and a future NBA player, and Trey and Tyus Jones. So, how do you guys teach ball screen defense? Do you have a variety of different calls, or do you guys keep it pretty simple and you're really good at one style of ball screen D?
You know, I tell you, we have over the years, we've gone back and forth. We try to switch as much as possible. But you know, back when Apple Valley was really good, that was not an option. You couldn't do that. Um, we we used to hard hedge a lot, and then we kind of got away from that. Now we kind of do more of a, you know, we call it a flat hedge. We're kind of just trying to string guys out a little bit. So we do that. But again, we try to switch as much as we can if we're able to do that. And this year, I think we're going to be able to do that more than we have lately. And you know, and we'll do some trapping and stuff too. And I think the one thing that we haven't done a really good job of is, I think sometimes you need to just switch it up, just to switch it up, even if you don't think it would be that successful. Because if you keep defending a ball screen the same way all the time, over and over and over, the offense is able to get in such a rhythm. And I'm a big, you know, we're a big man-to-man team. We play about, you know, probably 98% man. And I'm a big keep it simple. We do it a certain way and stuff like that. And, but I think in ball screens, you know, we've got to do a better job of changing it up a little bit. And we definitely like to, at the end of the game, you know, we'll play ball screens a certain way. And then at the end of the game, in the last 2 or 3 minutes or something like that, we will change how we're doing it, just to, again, try to change the rhythm and not allow the offense to just be able to do everything, you know, that they've been doing, and just mix it up a little bit. And, you know, and sometimes we trap a really good player. But, you know, back in the days when it was Tyus Jones, that didn't work. You know, you're going to trap Tyus Jones. I'm sorry, but he's going to find the open man, and it's going to be a layup, and that's going to be a problem.
So what are some of your teaching points with your switching defense? I know we're a switching team, and I'm going to come back to your point about what I had mentioned in a previous podcast about giving up layups. And I'll give you, I'll let you hear, I'll explain to you, but I'll wait till the end on that one. But we're a switching team. So what are some of your big teaching points when you're teaching like off-ball switching? And I mean, you mentioned pick and roll defense, but mostly off the ball.
Yeah, you know, we don't do a ton of off the ball. We switch dribble handoffs. If there's contact, we try not to switch. We tell kids, so basically any off-ball screens and stuff like that, we're basically trying not to switch. We do very little switching. We switch on-ball screens. We switch dribble handoffs with contact. The rest of it, you know, we either, you know, what we call take the shortcut, or we chase, depending on if it's a shooter or not. We do some switching if we have to, when we come across some players that are, you know, obviously just dangerous offensive players. You know, we have to do some switching. But, you know, the one thing I learned a long time ago, and it actually, I keep learning it over and over and over, because sometimes we get away from it. But the year that we won the state championship with JP was not a great defender. He was a great athlete. He was a great offensive player. And because of that, I don't think that I'm being nice when I say this, I don't think he focused on defense nearly as much as he should have. But one of the things that we thought was JP, when he played for D1 Minnesota, and D1 switched everything. And JP was so good at jumping passing lanes, you know, just jumping out, tipping it, go down and dunk it and stuff like that. And so anyway, I had the brilliant idea. I'm like, hey, we're gonna basically not switch anything. But JP, anytime your man, you know, if you are in a screen with JP, we're gonna allow that to be a switch. JP loved that. He thought that was great. We go for the Wisconsin-Minnesota challenge, you know, for the breakdown deal. We go to Kaukauna, Wisconsin. We play Stevens Point, and they just smoke us. It was in January, I think, or maybe the beginning of February or something like that, the year that we won the state championship. And we just got smoked. And then we had a 5-hour bus ride back home. And I remember us as coaches just sitting there. It was just like, what are we going to do now? This is just we just got completely embarrassed by a very well-coached team, a very talented team. And I'm just like, you know what? We're going to go back to square one, and we're not going to switch, and we're not going to have the JP rules anymore. And, so I guess what I'm getting at is we try to keep everything as simple as possible. Try to keep it very disciplined, where, I don't like a lot of switching, just because then I think there's not enough accountability. I'm really big on accountability as far as on the boards and stuff like that. And, so it's just a philosophy that's what works for us. And it fits in with the kind of personnel we have. And that, you look at what is your talent level, and then you look at what league do you play in and what do you have to do to compete. And we've set up our defense basically for that.
Let's go to the other side of the ball offensively. For those that haven't tuned in, watch you guys in the section or in the state semis and finals, which seems to happen more times than not. In that Thursday night 4A games into the Saturday nightcap state championship game, like you've been in, I think, 4 times. What is your guys' offense philosophy of those that aren't familiar with the Panthers?
I think the biggest thing is we try to play fairly fast. I don't think that we don't do a crazy amount of pressing. And when we do pressing, it's basically full court man just to wear people down and stuff like that. But I've just kind of, I would say we don't take a lot of chances defensively. So then offensively, we're trying to play fast. But because of our style defensively, I think that, we maybe don't, it's not just a huge emphasis to get down there and burp up a shot, but we definitely want to, if we can get an early 3 and stuff like that, we love flares in transition. We've run a lot of flares over the years. We love that. And really, I've listened to guys talking about the podcast of, we run this offense or we run that offense. We actually change our offense a little bit based on our personnel. It's mostly motion based. Right now we're running a 5-man motion, a lot of curl cuts, a lot of back cuts, some dribble handoffs, some ball screens. But I'm a huge believer in, swinging the ball from side to side, attacking bad closeouts. So for us, a lot of times it's just like, hey, let's just get the ball moving here, and then our kids are pretty smart about, hey, let's get it moving. But then when it gets reversed to our best dude, let's get downhill and let's get in the lane and, do some back cutting and things like that. So, but I would say flares. And then the other thing is we run quite a few sets. I think I would classify them as quick hitters though. I'm not a big, I look at some plays and it's just like, oh my gosh, they just passed it like 7 times to get that shot. I mean, that's crazy. We can't do that. We're quick hitters. We do a lot of quick hitters. And so we do a lot of that, and I'm listening to Joe Berger talking about 35 sets and stuff like that. It's like, wow, that's a lot of sets. But then when I think about it, we have quite a few sets too. But I honestly feel like ours are definitely kind of the quick hitter variety. And so, but I think a big deal for us too is, the shot selection. We harp on that big time. You got to get your best players to get most of the shots. And so that's one bad thing about motion. But again, I think our kids, we do a good job of explaining roles and stuff like that. And our kids know what they're good at. And we basically, I don't remember what coach said that the other day, we tell our kids, hey, do what you're good at. Like if you're good at catch and shoot, then catch and shoot. If you're good at, putting it on the floor, then put it on the floor and, but be smart about that. And, and then it's obviously if you got a player who can catch and shoot and put it on the floor, then all of a sudden you got some pretty good players. So, but we just offensively, we try to play together, play smart, and take good shots.
I'll make sure Joe down the street at South doesn't listen to this. But what are a couple of your quick hitters that you're willing to share that you guys run that, maybe isn't giving anything away, just that are pretty common within your offense?
Yeah, I would say, one little set that we've done, and I actually stole this. I learned this in starting in 1990. We played in the Minnesota Conference back in the day. New Prague, Chaska, Benilde St. Margaret's, Holy Angels, Red Wing. Anyway, one of the best coaches in there was Denny Welter at Chaska. Great coach. Great coach. He started every game with the same play. Every game. Every game. I'm not talking most games. I'm talking every single game. And it was, we call it X, and it's 1-4, two guys on the block. You know, point guard comes up, dribbles basically at the elbow, dribbles at a guy. That post comes out diagonally. So he comes out to the other lane line. So I'm on the lane line. That post comes out, swing it to him, reverse it to the backside wing. And then that post that you dribbled away from, he's trying to get a post up. And then the point and the post that popped out and swung the ball, those guys doubled down for the backside wing. So it's just a very simple, super simple. It's two passes. It's pass, pass into the post. And like I say, Chaska would run that. It's just like, and I can remember way back in the day, I'd tell my team, hey, we're not going to let them score on this. Like, we know what the play is. We're not going to let them do it. And I remember one year, I spent this was like my 5th year in Lakeville. I'm sick of getting burned on this same play. And they had great players. And so we talked about it, spent like 15 minutes working on it. Sure as crap. Game starts, boom, boom, pass, 3-point play, and we foul them. And it's just like, whatever. It is so simple. But, again, that kind of goes back to my philosophy of, you keep it simple and you have really good players and they know how to execute things. It can be successful. And we use that play I put that in. It's like, that's the other thing that I've done over the years too. It's like, you have something that's really, really good and we can't stop it, then I'm putting it in for sure. I have no problem doing that. And then we'll call it, if I see a Princeton thing, we'll call it Princeton and we'll run it. It's the way it is.
So that brings me back to, your earlier point is, if you want to let your team go in for a layup, other team going for a layup, you can just name that after us if you want. So here's the deal on that. I'm gonna give you my 30 seconds. This is, I want these all to be about the guests, not about me, but you brought it up. So here's our thing is it goes back to the point that you made about playing hard. And it's just two different ways of playing hard. What we have found is where we get into trouble in games is like, we're a pressing team. We're a switching team. We're up the line. We're aggressive. Is where we get into trouble is a couple guys are playing tentative. And so there's always a pressure release on the court. And so our philosophy is play aggressive. If you guys get beat once or twice, we can live with that. Like, we'll work on that where we think we're going to get the trade off from getting steals and passing lanes or speeding teams up into bad shots. And so it's just more the mentality of, and we don't say, hey, give them their 3 layups this half. And then, okay, they've only gotten 1. So you got 2 more to give up, but more the mentality of making sure all 5 guys, like you mentioned, are playing hard and are being aggressive. Because, a team who's, 4 guys are aggressive and 1 guy is scared and tentative, that's an easy pressure release and everyone else gets screwed. So it's more just the teaching, the mentality of it more than actually letting up layups. But it happens from time to time, and we do try to go back the other way and throw a punch. But, I do appreciate you hearing you critique that a little bit, and we might have to bring that up on Tuesday at our next workout with my assistant coach. But first of all, I really appreciate taking time. We're recording this on Sunday night. You coming on here, and I appreciate you listening, and that means the world. Because like I said, you're someone that I've watched from afar and really tried to learn from and study as much as I can, and some of the stuff that you do. So I appreciate you taking time and coming on here.
Absolutely. It's been great for sure.
Coach Oxton, I appreciate it. Have a good rest of your night and stay safe. And hopefully we're back out there when things get, after the summer months, get rolling normally here in the fall and get our season started on time.
For sure. All right. Good luck to you.
Thank you.